Today on Chicago This Week, for months now, the war in Iran has affected the nation.
From rising gas costs, inflated grocery prices, and veteran opposition, many have felt the impact.
Here in Chicago, we talk to policy experts.
You can't just keep bombing people forever.
Veterans.
As those service members are deciding they don't want to fight these wars anymore.
And Iranians themselves.
Friends, family are still in Iran. Okay, their lives matters to me.
All this and more right now.
Hello and welcome to a special episode of Chicago This Week. I'm Victoria Olalea.
And I'm Morgan Hawes. Today we'll be taking a deeper look into the war with Iran, but we begin with breaking news. According to government-aligned media, this morning, Tehran suspends talks with the U.S. to protest Israel's expanding military offensive in Lebanon. This comes after the U.S. and Iran exchanged strikes over this past weekend. An Iranian-aligned news agency added that the Iranian government is considering a full closure into the Strait of Hormuz. Iran did not comment officially, and U.S. officials did not immediately respond to comment either.
Staying overseas, even as Iran is considering a full closure, it has established operational control over the Strait of Hormuz, a critical global resource causing severe economic impacts. Here to give us a little more information on the importance of the strait is our reporter, Morgan Norris. Morgan?
Yeah, Victoria, the Strait of Hormuz is the world's most critical oil and gas choke point, and it's the only sea passage from the Persian Gulf to the open ocean. It's a global energy lifeline and a primary export route for Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and Iran itself. So any blockades like what's happening right now causes immediate supply shortages and sends global fuel prices soaring. Beyond that, it's vital for the trade of natural gas and fertilizer, making it essential for global food security. And there are no practical alternatives to the strait, no viable detours, so all ships entering or leaving must pass through this narrow 21-mile gap, meaning nations across the globe, specifically in the United States, are experiencing major consequences. Victoria?
Thanks, Morgan. Besides trade, the United States and Iran has had a tense history that ranges several decades, from oil, international policy, to Western intervention. I spoke to an award-winning Iranian filmmaker and assistant professor at Northwestern University for some more insight. As people walk the streets of the United States, the impact of conflict thousands of miles away is hitting home. Things like higher gas prices, groceries, and flight costs are tied to growing tensions with Iran. But this moment is tied to a history that goes back generations.
The biggest turning point was probably the hostage crisis when 66 Americans, including diplomats and other personnel, were taken hostage in a U.S. embassy in Iran. That was the beginning of sort of a pattern in the behavior of the Islamic regime.
That crisis marked a turning point in how the regime handled conflict. She says many Iranian activists who opposed the government later faced imprisonment, torture, or execution. She adds that one natural resource has long been a driving force behind conflict in the region.
Oil definitely has been the center of many ups and downs of the history in Iran.
That dynamic is also shaping current policy, including efforts to expand the Abraham Accords.
One of the goals that Trump is, probably following and constantly talk about is bringing more Gulf countries to the Abraham Accords. Some of the countries such as, UAE and Bahrain have already accepted the Abraham Accords, but while others like Saudi Arabia and Qatar and Kuwait were not willing to join.
She says that the regime has fueled divisions across Gulf countries, a dynamic she believes may align with broader U.S. goals.
The regime turned the whole Gulf countries against themselves. And that might be one of the objectives of the U.S. intervention.
One Champaign-Urbana activist shares her perspective on U.S. intervention in the Southwest Asia and North Africa region.
When it comes to U.S. policy, or even just Western policy in general in that area, the word that comes to me is meddling. You see a repetitive meddling in the affairs in the area.
She says U.S. intervention in the region is often tied to cooperation with its own interests.
U.S. has been militarily present in many countries, many of the Arab and Gulf countries for a very long time, but then also on levels that are a little less visible when it comes to things like aid being conditional on their support of different U.S. policies, their support of U.S. bases on their sovereign land.
Despite her concerns, she shares her hopes for the future of the region.
People want self-determination, and people are capable of self-determination. And this idea that they need foreign intervention and they need foreign influence to have their own self-determination is incredibly condescending.
Iran and the United States have had a strained relationship when it comes to international policy. While the United States says peace talks with Iran are still ongoing, both nations have continued to trade strikes, threatening the ceasefire and potential agreement to end the war. And these constant back and forth negotiations have caused both confusion and frustration among the American people. I talked to some experts and activists in the Chicago area to learn more. After weeks of fighting amid peace talks, President Donald Trump is reportedly considering a tentative agreement with Iran, saying that he'll only accept a deal that is good for the American people. But political science and international policy experts argue that he started a war he can't get out of.
Well, I think the administration's really struggling to figure out where the deal is going to come from. They dismissed the agreement that was in place since 2015. This was the Obama agreement. But they understood that because the deal was gone, Iran was building up the nuclear capacity again.
Politically, it's really a dangerous position to be in, but also because there aren't any real good off-ramps here. This almost changes minute by minute, but it does seem like they're getting closer to an agreement on something that will sort of begin the process of negotiations. But that's really only getting us to the starting line. That's getting us to where we were before the conflict began.
And these experts say that Iran has the leverage.
Iran, by seizing control of the Strait of Hormuz, has basically put a stranglehold on the global economy. Economically, the United States is in a very, very poor position,
making this war a leading cause to a steady decline in President Trump's approval ratings, even with his supporters.
Trump supporters who have a long history of certain policy positions have been willing to set those aside, but in this issue they seem to have drawn the line. President Trump promised no more forever wars, and so that's why it's so difficult now for the administration to get out of this, because they can't get the agreement that they want.
And in Chicago, many have voiced their disapproval.
From the Trump perspective, it's all about telling people we're winning, we're in control, we're the strongest force in the world, but what hopefully more people are seeing is how destructive this administration and U.S. foreign policy in general has been.
This war was not an American war. It was not. It was a war of choice of few people in the cabinet, right? This administration, and also it doesn't secure any of national interests of American.
Ali Taro is an Iranian refugee and former Iranian political prisoner. He says his main focus is to advocate for the safety of Iranians.
I'm always looking for how we can get rid of this regime, how we can make changes, right? So it matters, how many people, how many lives we can save.
He worries for the safety of his family, adding that they shouldn't have to die for such an unnecessary war.
I have so many friends, family that are still in Iran. Okay, their lives matters to me. I don't want them, I don't want them to be killed for nothing. Technically, there is no solution for Americans, for President Trump. He just needs to say, okay, we are giving up. Let's sign a peace.
We have so many problems with democracy here in the U.S. that we certainly shouldn't be spreading it elsewhere and spending more and more on weapons. It does affect our communities here.
But despite this war's unpopularity, experts say the conflicting demands between Iran and the U.S. means that the end is likely out of reach.
I mean, again, this is a major, major political problem that they don't really have a good answer for unless there's, some way where he pulls off an amazing victory in the next couple of days, which I think is unlikely.
As I mentioned, because of this drawn-out peace deal, many Americans have voiced their disapproval for not only the war, but the Trump administration itself. Here with a look into this pivot on public support is Emilio Reyes. Emilio?
Yes, Morgan, you're absolutely correct. And according to The Hill, recent polls show that President Trump's approval ratings have hit a record low across both of his terms in office. Before the war, President Trump's approval ratings hovered at around 40%, but now, almost 4 months into the war, they sit at about 34%. And among Republicans, his net approval is at 61%, which is down 30 points since January 2025. Experts suggest that a reason for this ties into Trump's previous campaigns, where he advocated against endless wars overseas. But now, the war in Iran is still ongoing, with no end date in sight. Morgan?
According to AP News, this war has triggered the largest supply and energy disruptions in history, with the global oil market facing unprecedented price swings. Didi Elbigo spoke to political science experts to find out how this affects us. Take a look.
The conflict involving Iran is having effects far beyond the Middle East. Experts say uncertainty surrounding the Strait of Hormuz, one of the world's most important oil shipping routes, is helping drive up oil prices. Dr. Floros, a political science professor at the University of Illinois, Chicago, says Americans are feeling the effects of the war every time they fill up their tanks.
Then going to the grocery store, going to, fill up your gas tank, it's very clear that it's hitting pocketbooks. And you can tell in polls about the Republicans' chances in the midterm elections that Americans are feeling it.
Dr. Floros says much of the concern centers around the Strait of Hormuz, a narrow waterway along Iran's southern coast.
Not only is Iran preventing ships from passing unless they're willing to pay travel fees, but the United States is also prohibiting ships from moving through the area. And this is not something that is going to be easily fixed.
Experts say any meaningful drop in oil and gas prices depends on restoring normal traffic through the Strait of Hormuz, but reopening the waterway may not be that simple. Dr. Holman of Dominican University says Iran has little incentive to give up its influence over the strait.
So the idea is Iran is using the closing of the strait as the first bargaining chip for other things that they want, as well as holding that over the head of the United States for what the United States wants out of this, whether that's giving up its nuclear materials or whatnot, or ballistic missile programs or those types of broader issues.
Honestly, between this and paying bills is kind of ridiculous. I don't know how longevity-wise we'll manage that.
Experts say until oil flows freely through the Strait of Hormuz, relief at the gas pump may be hard to find. Didi Elbigo, Chicago This Week.
Thank you, Didi. While the price of crude oil is now starting to decrease from wartime peaks, residual costs are still trickling down to everyday expenses. I'm sure you've noticed the rising costs at the pump. According to Gas Buddy, Chicago prices have surged 19% since this time last year. Our reporter Matthew Jump gives us a closer look into the cost of convenience, or the lack thereof.
3 months into the U.S.-Iran war, the Strait of Hormuz has been effectively shut down, disrupting roughly 20% of the world's oil supply, and it's Chicago drivers paying the price.
Chicagoans spending about $1.42 a gallon more on filling up than they did a year ago. The bulk majority of that, if not 100%, has to do with the Strait of Hormuz, and the 15 to 20 million barrels of oil is impacted every day.
But despite the sticker shock, DeHaan says he's not seeing Americans actually change their habits. Memorial Day weekend demand came in right on expectations.
The broad majority of Americans are not really impacted in a significant way yet by the current state of gas prices. While many Americans are certainly, discontent with high prices, it doesn't yet appear to be having a major impact on keeping Americans closer to home.
Ted Tima is a case in point. The Chicago area sales rep covers the entire Midwest, putting up to 30,000 miles on his car every year.
I cover the same distance that I've always done. I would say probably 20 to 30%. I would probably say more closer to 30.
Where the impact is being felt, DeHaan says, is in the businesses that move goods. Diesel in Illinois recently hit $6 a gallon.
Everything furniture related relies really heavily on the supply chain. Everything requires fuel and resources to get around, so there's definitely surcharges from our side of things in terms of cost. I'd say at least 10% with the recent rise of gas.
As for hopes of an electric vehicle bump, DeHaan says the numbers don't back it up yet.
Some amount of Americans that were looking at a new car that are now more focused on EVs, but the numbers are rather low.
With negotiations between the US and Iran ongoing, DeHaan says prices have started easing. But real relief, he says, is still tied to the strait reopening. In Chicago, Matthew Jump, Chicago This Week.
Thank you, Matthew. And if you think it costs a lot to drive, inflation has also hit the checkout counter. According to the USDA, the Consumer Price Index for groceries increased significantly from March to April, with food prices rising by over 3% in the past year. With more information on how these rates are affecting shoppers is Alexis Kugis.
As the war in Iran continues, its effects are being felt far beyond the Middle East. Here in Chicago, people are noticing higher grocery bills, with some everyday items costing more than they did just a few months ago.
Everything has gone up pretty much across the board. It's in a lot of stuff that we import especially.
The rising costs are affecting both businesses and customers, forcing many shoppers to pay closer attention to what's in their carts. And while prices are increasing across the store, some items are seeing bigger jumps than others.
Probably the biggest jump has been coffee. That's gone up dramatically in the past year. But I can definitely tell shoppers are being a lot more careful with what they're buying and how often they buy it. I have like a lot of regular customers, and sometimes stuff that I'm used to seeing them buy, they're not buying as much. They said, yeah, I'm cutting back on it a little bit. I'll still buy it, but not as frequently because, we do have to be more careful.
The impact extends beyond grocery aisles. Small business owners who rely on fresh ingredients say higher costs have affected them as well.
Well, the rising grocery prices cause me to carefully shop around. It takes more time and energy now for me to find the product that I need at a good cost price.
While shoppers and business owners are feeling the impact here in Chicago, the story begins overseas. Sam Ori, the executive director of the University of Chicago's Institute for Climate and Sustainable Growth, explains that as the conflict in Iran continues, global oil prices have risen, driving up fuel costs around the world.
When there's a disruption anywhere in oil supplies, that affects prices everywhere. And so there's just been a direct hit, a big crunch on global diesel supplies, and that has been probably the fuel where we've actually seen the largest price spike so far. So that is really impacting the cost of getting goods to the supermarket.
Ultimately, the price of food itself is not going up, but the price of transporting it is. This is how those increases can eventually make their way to the checkout line.
Everything that gets to a store at some point probably got there on a truck. And those trucks are powered by diesel fuel. And so diesel is one of the products that we refine from crude oil. And so one direct input into food prices is that as diesel prices have gone up, the cost of transporting those goods around the world and then on the road, from a port in Los Angeles or New York or New Jersey or whatever it is, to get across the country or from a farm in Nebraska to get to a store in Chicago, the cost of that has gone up quite a bit.
For now, consumers are left watching both the news overseas and the prices at home. In Chicago, I'm Alexis Kugis, Chicago This Week.
With the ongoing conflict, many students have paused their study abroad plans. Gabrielle Hayward spoke to these students who expressed their disappointment.
From research projects to study abroad programs, some college students are finding their academic plans on hold.
This isn't something new that was just starting to happen. We started to see inklings in the impact of the imperialism that's taking place over there. So we've seen study abroads be canceled that went to Palestine prior to the ethnic cleansing of the state.
As an academic advisor and educational psychology PhD student, Melvin Woolfolk has seen the challenges up close.
The past presidential administration, there were ample funds to support those students. Now where we have these times of uncertainties where folks, they don't want to take a chance and travel and be targeted for their country.
Woolfolk isn't the only one seeing the effects.
it really sucks. It's unfortunate because the work that we do is so impactful, especially with our undergraduate students and thinking about how we develop curriculum and what that looks like for our emotional well-being, and the fact that research is being cut or canceled and that we're no longer able to present or do presentations or go as far as Cancun or Puerto Rico or the Dominican. It's unfortunate that we're not able to share our research as far. Yeah.
Neuroscience student Jean Petit, the consequences were financial.
I was fortunate enough to be able to go to Cancun completely for free. Everything was all included, and so it really was just really excited about being able to present internationally. Was very awesome, and the fact that I'm no longer able to do that. We had a recent conference in California, and that was not fully funded. And
Gabby Contreras also knows the value of studying abroad. As a student, she studied in Peru and Spain. Now, as a study abroad advisor, she says global conflict is creating new challenges for international programs.
Obviously, we have a lot of parents reaching out that are very concerned about the well-being of their students who are abroad currently, who are going to be going abroad this summer and this coming fall, and what that looks like for them. Like I mentioned, our Cyprus program that we had at the University of Nicosia, really, really amazing program. We were going to have many students there both this summer and this coming fall, and we had to cancel the program because of the conflict and because Cyprus is currently at a level 3. So obviously that caused a lot of issues. We had to reroute a lot of the students pretty late in the process. Some students ended up just canceling, and they're no longer going to study abroad because that was the program they really wanted to go on.
From University Village, Gabrielle Hayward, Chicago This Week.
American veterans hold deeply divided opinions regarding the war in Iran. But here in Chicago, some veterans protested their opposition on Memorial Day weekend. Caroline Geib covered the details of that demonstration.
The escalating conflict with Iran is driving a deep moral wedge through the military ranks. Here in Chicago at the Vietnam Veterans Memorial, veterans of all ages and active duty troops marked Memorial Day with a planned protest rally, gathering publicly to reject recent deployments.
We're out here in anger and resistance, and
rally leaders say this rebellion marks a rise in resistance from the very people trained to serve.
The resistance you're seeing within the ranks is because those service members are deciding they don't want to fight these wars anymore. People's consciousnesses are waking up.
This chant from a group of former troops and civilian labor unions called the war in Iran a rich man's war, directly linking the $1 trillion overseas expeditions to the severe federal funding cuts crippling veteran affairs hospitals at home.
To me, it makes no sense. To me, it's always about, it's always about somebody making money and the people who need, the actual American citizens and citizens everywhere getting, screwed over.
Protesters insist that rallies like these are the only way to make their voices heard, especially with a political system entirely deaf to public opinion. But academic experts say that the U.S. military faces an uphill structural climb, pointing out that today's all-volunteer army was specifically designed to shield the government from this exact type of pushback.
We don't have a political administration that is responsive to discontent, and this is not limited to the Trump administration.
By demanding their right to appeal directly to Congress and filing as conscientious objectors, service members say they are ready to take this battle to the next level, refusing to fight an ongoing war abroad while their own communities struggle to survive at home.
So we will continue to show up until there is no war.
In downtown Chicago, I'm Caroline Geib, Chicago This Week.
Thank you, Caroline. Staying on veterans, according to the National Defense Authorization Act, an annual defense policy bill signed by Congress just widened the military draft pool. Here with more on that is our reporter, Morgan Norris.
If you're a man with a license age 18 to 26, you may not know that you're registered for the military draft. Now, this December, license or not, you will be.
Patrick McGuire is a proud veteran.
A certificate of authenticity. The best thing about being a veteran, back then it was straighten out my life, but now it's our
camaraderie. All the people, the veterans, a couple years of military will straighten you out. And you will be proud of what you did, and they'll get your life online.
He's heard about the conflict between the U.S. and Iran, but he doesn't see a draft happening.
Because I don't think these kids are going to do that. It's a whole different generation, you know. Some of these kids that don't have a life and are screwed up, they need to go to the military for a couple of years.
Well, right now in the state of Illinois, if you're a man between the ages of 18 to 26 with a license, you're automatically registered for the military draft. Now in December, in the midst of the conflict, if you're a man between the ages of 18 to 26, licensed or not, the Trump administration signed into law that you will be registered for the military draft. Patrick is right about young men in Chicago who aren't happy to hear it.
It makes me feel about the same, uncomfortable, I would say. I think there's a lack of consent involved in that.
Girlfriend, dog, and I want to just live a peaceful life out here. I don't really want to get into anything like that.
And understanding what you can and can't control is important as well.
Savion Young is 25 years old and serves in the U.S. Army Reserves as chaplain.
Yes, it's okay to be nervous, and you're not alone in doing it.
But he has noticed all the changes since Secretary of War Pete Hegseth took command.
Either you are disciplined, fit, and trained, or you are out.
At the same time, I'm there as a chaplain, whether forced for people who have been forced to do it or will be, or not.
The last time there was a draft was 1973. Experts don't believe it's going to happen anytime soon and say the December announcement may be for another reason entirely.
Automatic registration, it's partly a data collection more efficient or something, maybe something from Doge. And it makes us look tough.
In the meantime, families are holding on to hope.
And I need them to be happy and protected and to live their life and to know that it's going to be what it's going to be.
The automatic draft registration takes place December 18th. And if a draft happens, the Selective Service System says it will be by lottery.
Thank you, Morgan. While concerns about a draft remain, rhetoric surrounding the conflict overseas continues to circulate. Some members of the Chicago's Middle Eastern communities say the impact is already being felt here at home. Emilio Reyes joins us with more. Emilio, you spoke to members of both the Muslim and Iranian American communities. What are they telling us?
Yeah, Morgan, many people told me that the conflict is affecting them in different ways. Some expressed concerns about discrimination and how they're perceived here in the United States, while others described a deep personal connection to events unfolding overseas, their family, culture, and community ties. As developments overseas continue, some community members say the conflict is influencing how they are viewed here at home.
There's always going to be a threat when it comes to being visibly Muslim, Palestinian, and a woman.
She says those concerns are not new, but believes international conflict can bring renewed attention to Muslim communities in the United States. CARE Chicago legal director Hina Masabji says her organization continues to hear concerns from community members who feel they are being viewed differently because of their faith or background.
And Muslims view themselves as Americans. They view themselves as a part and fabric of this culture.
Musabji says those concerns can be felt throughout communities across the country.
If you are Muslim or from a national origin that is primarily Muslim, you're being treated differently.
For many Iranian Americans, the conflict has also renewed conversations about family, culture, and their connections to Iran.
The good thing about the Iranian people, I will say, is we're very united. A lot of, even doesn't matter if you grew up in Germany, if you grew up in the United States, Iran, we see each other as one unit.
Many say they continue following developments closely, with family, friends, and loved ones still connected to the region.
Obviously, they don't like war. They don't like seeing their cities being bombed. But if that gives them a glimmer of hope that there might be a change.
As events continue to unfold, many say they hope people remember the human impact of the conflict both overseas and here at home. Those I spoke with said they share a common concern for those people whose lives continue to be affected by events unfolding overseas.
Thank you, Emilio. Well, that's all the time we have today. Thank you for watching this special episode of Chicago This Week.
As the season comes to a close, we want to thank all of you at home who tuned in to watch.
I'm Victoria Olalea.
And I'm Morgan Hawes. We'll see you next time.